Hey Dojo friends, in this part 2 I continue my discussion with my friend Hardee Hakutoshi Merritt. We go into some real detail about Jiu-Jitsu and his journey to find his teachers and how he adopted it into his training at his dojo in North Carolina. Hardee goes into the details about the strengths of Jiu-Jitsu and how sport and self-defense might be different methodologies that he teaches at his dojo. Talk a little bit about ego and being tapped out. We talk a little bit about student retention. We talk a little business and a little bit about firearms. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this discussion with friends in the martial arts, Hardee Hakutoshi Merritt.
But we're all works in progress. So I don't want to come out and say this is the way to do it, this is the only way to do it, this is the best way to do it. This is just the way I'm doing it right now.
I think it's important for us to maintain that connection and brotherhood, because whether you do jujitsu, karate, taekwondo, Budo, we all have that same love, right? And anything you see on the internet and someone's like, well, that wouldn't work. Well, we have already thought of that 1,000 times. And when we turn the camera off, we're always doing the what if questions. And for me, doing many years of Bujinkan, leaving it, going to Toshindo, leaving Toshindo, going back to Bujinkan, kind of just like Mr. Hayes was saying, and yourself, just kind of letting all of it go and saying, look, this is my dojo, my brand, so to speak. Let's steal and do what works and not attack an entire system of martial arts because someone doesn't like the politics of it or who's in charge. I just saw through all that BS when I was in my 30s. I'm now almost 55. It's like, no, I do what works. I jettison what I think is junk, and there's a lot of stuff in the Bujinkan. I teach them like that's crap nowadays. It worked in armor, and here's why. So my speciality was to go back into the katas and say, what's the principle? What's the kaname of this? And why did they use it in armor? And why is it junk in the 21st century? Why is this one just as good now? Why did Jiu-Jitsu take that onikudaki and make it something else? I love the sleuthing around in these old books. But for years I was told, oh, don't look at that book. That's not our brand. And I'm like, well, I want to look at it twice as much now because it's not our brand. I'm a seeker. I'm a student. I want to know what's in that book. And when I found that Tenchi gene chart, which I had gotten in the 80s and neglected it, and then I went back to it when I was more experienced and older, and I'm like, I don't know half of this stuff. There's so much depth in there. And that's why I made that commitment to go through it. I'm like, I didn't see any of this for the last 10 years, and I am lacking here. I have a hole here. I suck at this. And you pick up a weapon and you use it for a week, you get pretty good with it, and then you neglect the other 10 weapons you should have been doing. We go on the ground and practice jujitsu. Well, now your striking game goes away for a while. You get good at throwing someone. Well, now I suck on the ground because I haven't done that in 6 months. It's how do you, as a practitioner, we have to allocate our time because now we have students and a business on top of it and family. How do you allocate your time and your training to focus and put your spotlight? I'm going to do jujitsu now, but tomorrow I'm going to do togakure ryu, and tomorrow I'm going to do gyoko ryu. There's not enough time, Hardee, in the day for us to be good at any of this really well. Do you have a rotational system where you go through a school? Or, matter of fact, let me ask you about your classes. Do you have a weekly class with the historical martial arts and then jujitsu and then a modern toshindo? In your daily schedule, how do you allocate all these skill sets in your classes? Like, how is it set up?
As a practitioner, and then for us as sort of guides to others in this, we have to decide how we're going to optimize our training. You could train Bujinkan and optimize it to learn all the historical stuff and to be a living history textbook. And you just know all these kata and how it's perfect. Or you could optimize it for self-defense. Like I'm going to not spend a lot of time. Maybe we'll talk about it, but we're going to optimize our training. In Jiu-Jitsu, you could optimize it for self-defense. Like how does Jiu-Jitsu work against punches, against kicks? You could optimize it for sport Jiu-Jitsu competition. And there's a big debate in the Jiu-Jitsu community right now. There's a lot of people that are like, starting working on skills that are specifically jujitsu versus jujitsu. Instead of, when I came up, white belt to blue belt was jujitsu versus the world. Somebody's going to come in and hit you. How do you take them down? They're going to try to escape. What do you do once they're on the ground? Um, so I cycle, and I have different interests, and my school has cycled. The population of my school has cycled. There's been many phases of the dojo over the decades.
Yeah.
And where we are currently, I have a toshindo Q level class, and by my design, I am aiming it towards optimizing for self-defense.
Okay.
By the time you're there, I'm not doing a lot of sword. I'm not doing a lot of spear. Things are sort of quick. When we take somebody on the ground, I'm not doing like jujitsu counters to things. We're going to go knee on belly. We're going to hit them, right? We're going to, and then we're going to leap back and get some space. In our Toshindo Dan classes, our black belt classes, it's a little bit more like less. These people have been training, some of them for 20 years, some of them
Yeah.
longer. And they may not be training for like a street fight now. They're training for the love of the art at that point.
Yeah.
And at that point, we explore. Like, we're going to look at this classical technique. Let's look at how it relates to this thing. Let's do some spear. Let's do some stuff like that. With our jujitsu classes, our foundations jujitsu classes is jujitsu versus the world. All right, this is stuff that needs to work in a fight. If you're in there, I'm not so worried about how do you berimbolo back take somebody, or how do you counter this elaborate set of collar chokes that some normal guy on the street's not going to put on you.
Yeah.
But in our advanced jujitsu classes, we go way down rabbit holes. What I'm doing is exploring what the most successful competitors are currently doing. We just try to optimize it for that. For our kids' classes, I try to optimize it for fun. Like our kids, when kids nowadays hear the word ninja, as much as they associate it with like stealthy Japanese warriors, they also associate it with parkour and obstacle courses. Like, we're working on, like, they're going to run and they're going to roll over this mat, and then they're going to dodge under the sword, and then they're going to knock this grip and hit the target and jump back. But everything's sort of built into like an obstacle course style, so that they get those things. Because if you can build the love for training, then they'll keep training. The thing about, you've got a dojo that's been around a long time. You probably have had the same thing, where I've got adults training with me now that I taught when they were 5, and they've been stuck with it all the way up. And that's special, like, to me. And that's the thing that I really want to maintain, is meeting the needs of our members so much so that they just keep coming, and ultimately they bring their kids.
Yeah. Well, that's our ultimate job. This is to literally replace ourselves, to give pieces of ourselves to our young students, and hope, again, you are just as discouraged as I am when you train a student for 7, 8 years. They're so good, and then they go off to college. It's just part of life. And you're like, no, you and I are thinking this now. No one's watching this. Skip college. Don't do that. Don't go into that. Open your own dojo. It's going to be hard. I'll help you however I can. But you are born to do this. You would have such a good career in the martial arts. And they're like, no, I'm going off to college. Thanks for everything. But what we are doing is sowing seeds. And I do believe long after I'm gone that they will come back to it in their 30s and 40s and open a dojo or a training club, or at least give it to their family as a gift. The frustration, one of the biggest things as an instructor, is seeing them nurtured, and then they go away. They leave the nest and fly away. And you're like, no, let me just hold that little bird leg a little longer. Stay. Because I've seen you do so much, and you have such potential, and it's just going out the door. And I remember complaining to Mr. Hayes about student retention, how hard it is. And, you press your nose on the window. Where's Bob? Bob's been missing for a week. And he's like, stop doing that, you idiot. You can't. They come into your school and they have these needs met, and then they leave. That's it. You've seen his talk about the thimble and the cup and the bucket. Some people only want a cup of martial arts. They quit at yellow belt. Some quit at red. Some get to black. They're gone. Only the 4 or 5, and those are the same guys with you, are going to become the coaches and instructors. And I don't know about you, but it is impossible to judge who's going to stay and who isn't. Your best guy moves to Texas for a tech job. No, no, we lost Jim. Jim's one of the best. And then the little quiet guy in the corner, the Todds and the Hardees, are the ones that lead in 10 years. I'm like, my instructors, who's going to stay? Who's going to go? I have no clue. The older I get, the less intelligent I become at trying to predict anything in the martial arts anymore. And that's why I love it so much. Every single day we walk in this dojo, there's some new problem, some new issue, some new magic, which you talked about. I just love this stuff. I can't get enough of it. And then I talk to someone like you. I'm like, I get to talk to Hardee about martial arts. I don't have to punch a clock today. And as business owners, we have unbelievable stress that would knock people on their feet, off their feet. But then my friends come in and they go, yeah, but you don't have a boss that you hate. You don't have to worry about being fired and backstabbed by the management. Yeah, I'm like, but what's a paid day off? What is that? What is a holiday vacation for more than 2 days a year? Because I only take a week a year. I don't know about you. I'm like, there's no such thing as less than a 14-hour day for me. But then the flip side, yeah, but you get to be a ninja. You get to be G.I. Joe. Get to be Shokosugi. Yeah, I do. So I just find the grass does always look greener on the other side, but we all want what we don't have. I think that's the key to everything. I'm just ranting, but I think that you can appreciate our giddiness with this stuff and how unpredictable it is.
Yeah, for sure. And you hit the nail on the head with the not being able to predict who is going to be around, who's going to take up
Yeah.
leadership. And, again, with an old school, I've had multiple folks move off, have kids, life change, and ultimately move back. We've had people that have had a 20-year break. I have a guy right
Wow.
now that's he's in our red belt level, and he was a yellow belt 20 years ago. And then, came back in and started training and picked it back up. And another guy that I can think of that had a 12-year break. He had a kid. That kid, 12 years old, grew up, finally got things settled enough that he could come back into training. And it's all a huge surprise. And I think as martial artists, like with that, and as business owners, it comes back down to this nin. It comes back down to like just keep going, just
Yeah.
keep showing up, keep persevering, keep looking, keep being excited, keep being curious. And people will surprise you, you'll surprise yourself, and ultimately, like, none of us are getting out of this alive, so we just
Yeah.
enjoy the ride as best we can.
What attracted you to Roy Dean, who I would assume is one of your main, I guess you'd call him a sensei to you, correct? To all
I
of us.
would.
But I don't know anything about Roy Dean. The name is catchy because isn't there Bacon or something? Jimmy Dean I'm thinking of, but the Roy Dean name's just, it's catchy. I don't know anything. I've seen a couple of videos with him. He seems really humble, really masterful. But what attracted you to him? Because there must be hundreds of jujitsu guys you could have followed. What was it about him that attracted you to him?
In the early days of my jiu-jitsu journey, I was obviously here in North Carolina. The Gracies seemed like they had carved up the U.S. and everybody sort of had a territory. I came up training under a Hoist Gracie certified guy, got a lot of my belts from Hoist. When I had first started, there wasn't much of a curriculum that I could perceive. There was nothing organized in the same way where we had like a sheet of paper. These are the skills you got to work on. We would show up and do what the teacher did. And I needed a little more structure to my training. And I found these training videos by some guy named Roy Dean. And it was, from white to blue belt, you should probably learn this. So I started buying those DVDs, maybe VHS back in the day, and going through those things. And as I would get promoted, I would buy the next Roy Dean thing. Roy Dean had, all right, so blue to purple, you should work on this. You should strive to have these qualities in your jiu-jitsu, and here's some technique examples of how you would do that. And I did that all the way up. I was in my brown belt under a Hoist organization. And when the shift happened and I was sort of cut adrift for a few minutes and unsure which direction to go, I had a couple that I had considered, a couple of people that were sort of mentors. And I had never trained with Professor Dean, but I was looking on his website and he happened to have a seminar in South Carolina, not too far from me. So I went down and went to the seminar, and there was an open mat the night before. So I went to the open mat, and Professor Dean was there, and he was like, hey, you want to roll? So I got in and I rolled with him, and we trained for what felt like 20, 30 minutes. And he gave me some really great feedback. He spent some time sort of asking questions about who I was and wanted to get to know me and where my jujitsu came from and all of that. And I went through the seminar. I really loved his style. He has a traditional background in I think it's called Seibukan Jiu-Jitsu and Aikido. He's got some Dan level in Aikido and in Judo. Spent some time living in Japan. He spoke the same language that I spoke when he would talk about things from a Jiu-Jitsu perspective. It wasn't about power. It wasn't about like using all of your strength to do something. It was about finding the circles in Jiu-Jitsu, letting the momentum carry this into this. And I mean, he was speaking my language. So I stayed in contact and messaged him. He ultimately invited me to come out to an affiliate retreat so that I could get to know the rest of the team. And I still wasn't like on the team or anything, but I went out and it was great jiu-jitsu. Like I was getting mauled. You know, it was wonderful. Really highly skilled guys. But when we were sitting on the wall in between rounds, you know, you're there, you're dying and you're dripping. People were talking about their meditation practice. People were talking about, again, like not stuff I was typically used to hearing from that side of the martial arts population. And it's like, these are my people. And through that experience, I decided I sort of applied to be on the we call it the crew RDA, but the Roy Dean affiliation, and haven't looked back since. I've got some really wonderful friends. I've got a whole new series of people that I can connect with and get information. Most of the folks that I have met through this have some other background as well. There's a Jeet Kune Do individual. There's a guy that runs a karate school. There's a guy that does sort of holistic body work and mixed with his jiu-jitsu, and it's incredible. And again, like great jiu-jitsu, like absolute savages, absolute killers on the mat, and then the nicest, like really refined individuals. So his acceptance and understanding of, and still, you know, he still teaches from a historical martial arts perspective all the time. You know, we would do a hongiaku into a double leg takedown. You know, somebody will go into an ate nage, into a foot sweep, into an omoplata, right? So the ability to combine those things was just what I was looking for. And he encourages it. He's not a big ego individual himself. He's very free to let other people in his crew, when we come up, he has us all share what we're working on and teach. He's just been a good role model from a strong jiu-jitsu perspective, but also that strong, what I would call Japanese martial arts values. And I couldn't be happier. We're hosting him.
Like a great guy. He sounds like a really good, just a general teacher who took jiu-jitsu to I don't want to say higher class, but a deeper depth. That's what I'm hearing from what you're telling me. And he sounds like someone that really wants to put the classical back into it. I wanted to ask you, because I've seen, again, from having friends that do jiu-jitsu, when it started, it was the pinnacle. And I saw the bravado of the Gracies and many others from UFC saying this is the ultimate martial art, all others suck. And then you saw, I'm seeing now, and this is where I'm going to get back to the question, but I'm seeing a huge backlash the last 4 or 5 years that jiu-jitsu is terrible. I'm talking hundreds of comments on YouTube or wherever. It's like people are now attacking it, which I always say is a very healthy thing to go through. Now, I'm going to ask you in a minute where I'm going with this, but I'm seeing backlash. It's junk. The guy pulls a knife out when you're trying to do some sort of omoplata, and he's going to kill you in 2 seconds. Who would dare go to the ground? This is not self-defense. There's no striking. I'll kick him in the balls. I poke his eye out. You know, the general bravado stuff, who obviously you and I know from people that don't practice, because people that practice are too busy to be keyboard warriors, and they would also understand a depth and have respect for each martial art. How have you seen, or are, I think you're a huge part of it. How are you, first of all, do you find in the sport aspect of jiu-jitsu, are they adding more self-defense because they're getting backlash? That's one question. Do you see jiu-jitsu, besides Roy and others, adding more stand-up hitting, what we would call old style self-defense in their sport art, or is it impossible to add that if you're doing tournaments about sport tap outs and stuff? How do they, you understand what I'm asking? How do they fit it all together? Because I'm starting to see people add it in.
So if you go back to the original, like early days of all of us seeing this from Hoist and his family coming in, they were absolutely dealing with strikes. There was a little bit of striking instruction,
Yeah.
but mostly the jiu-jitsu was designed to sort of cover against a strike, cover the distance, get to the person and bring him down to the ground. Through positional domination, eliminate the opportunities for the person to hit you. And they did it over and over and over again. Hoist won the first UFC without throwing a punch and without
I saw
getting.
that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Over the years, jiu-jitsu sort of quit worrying about it, right? Again, like you get to a point where like, all right, we've established we're the best. We've established we're the toughest guys in the room. Now we're gonna say who's the toughest guy in jiu-jitsu. We're gonna start standing. We're gonna try to take each other down. But some people don't even try to take down anymore. They just sit right to the ground. They call it pull and guard, and they try to tap each other out. And that's fine, right? And a lot of people really love it. It's a sporting outlet. I have a lot of people who come in to train and they don't care 2 cents about fighting. They want to do jiu-jitsu. Wow. And they get mad when I say, all right, let's have people start punching from a mount, or while people are rolling, sometimes I'll throw some rubber training knives out and somebody will grab it and they'll start stabbing and they get mad. They're like, no, I want to do jiu-jitsu. So I understand that. And people can have that perspective, but Hardee personally, my thing that I want to optimize our training for is self-defense. I want you to, at our school, we try to prioritize the sweep from the guard. If I'm playing on my back, I want to get to the top. Other places may not do that. They may want to get the submission first, but even if you're on the bottom and you're breaking somebody's arm, you could be getting kicked. You could be doing other stuff. So the jiu-jitsu world, if you really want to talk about fighting, there's a real natural progression to shift into MMA, where, all right, now we're going to punch and kick, and now we're going to do that sort of stuff. You see the same transition happening in wrestling. People, they wrestle up through high school, college. Maybe they do some stuff if they're real good and get in the Olympics, but the natural progression is into MMA at that point. And, you and I know our window for doing that is very finite. There's a point in your age, like you shouldn't be taking shots to the head on a regular basis. Sometimes the fights aren't even that bad. For me, it was the training getting ready for the fight. It was all the hits I took in training. It was all the, the neck cranks, the kicks to the head, all that stuff in training that really is cumulatively damaging. So at this point, I try to train striking skills intelligently, real good equipment, good gloves, mouthpieces, but very light contact. We don't do a lot of hard sparring striking here, but we do a lot of like Thai pad drills. We build the power, we build the reflexes, but I'm dumber than I used to be. And it's because of the head trauma. It's because of the kicks to the head and the punches to the head. So my son trains here, and I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to have him get kicked in the head over and over again. If he decides he wants to do boxing one day, fine. But if we're going to do our force-on-force training, we're going to get in and test it out. We're going to do it in a grappling sense, just so we can get that timing, get that sensitivity, we can learn that positional domination. The great thing about jujitsu for self-defense is if you're good at it, you decide when you want to go down and you decide when you want to get back up. If you're good
Yeah.
at jujitsu, the other person is unschooled, you can take them down at will. You can get on top of them. If you're tired of being on the ground, you can stand up when you want. And that's an important skill set. And that's what I focus on for our guys. Again, once we get in the advanced jujitsu class, it's jujitsu versus jujitsu. It's jujitsu for jujitsu's sake, which isn't. I'm going to play some positions in that class that I wouldn't say that you should play in a fight. There's a position
Sure.
called an X-guard, where both my legs are wrapped up on somebody and I've got one arm around their leg. And if this person was standing over me and it was a fight, yeah, they could stab me, they could punch me, they could beat me up. But in our Taijutsu classes, I'm trying to play, using let me back up a step. I believe what we do here is very unique
It
in that
certainly is. I love it. Yeah.
where the jujitsu that works really well for those fighting applications is combined in with the taijutsu that works really well for fighting applications, and that's where I'm trying to optimize the training here. So that's my approach to dealing with that, because you're right, jujitsu has, as the sport has gotten bigger, and it's getting bigger now. There's real pay-per-views of just jujitsu matches. That gets bigger, it's gonna be more specialized. It's gonna be it's gonna probably take into account the chaos of a fight. And here's the other thing, and a lot of people would disagree with it, and I disagree with this statement to a little bit, but I also try to keep it at heart. I can't remember the individual who said it, but he said, those that make a distinction between street and sport are usually ineffective at both.
Ah, love it.
So I like, in MMA, somebody's trying to punch you, right? In a street fight, somebody's trying to punch you. There may be rules in MMA and not rules in a street fight, but it's still, at that moment, you got to deal with that punch, right? In a jiu-jitsu match, somebody's trying to throw you down. In a fight, somebody may have you and they try to throw you down. Again, there's rules, but in that moment, in that microcosm of that conflict there, can you successfully still deal with that takedown attempt? So I look at the sport as a training method to help me, Hardee, be better at all the potential things that could come at me. I think it's a game. It's a game with consequences, but so is MMA. It's a game, but it's a game with real consequences that can help you be more capable in making decisions under pressure. It can make you more sensitive to dealing with pressures and pushes and pulls. It can refine your confidence in your technique. For you to apply a technique successfully in the chaos of fighting, it almost has to come from a subconscious place, a brainstem level. It has to be so trained that your body does it automatically and you don't have to think about it. And getting in and doing it against resistance over and over again will, I think, more quickly solidify that technique so that you can apply it without hesitation. And one of the ways to do that is to get in and wrestle with each other. And obviously, when I would box and kickbox back in the day, I would have moments or I'd have flashes where time would sort of slow down and that punch would come by and I would know that hook to the body was going to be there before it was there. And that happened because I played that game a lot. Ultimately, hopefully that helps translate into a skill set that if somebody jumps me in the parking lot, hopefully I could still access those attributes or access those skills. Its difference from Taijutsu is the training methodology.
Mm.
Do it against resistance. Break it up into little pieces. Start standing and see if you can take each other down, right? And do a little bit of resistance. All right, get on the ground, have somebody get on top of you, and make them totally uncooperative. Totally, and in fact, they're trying to roll you over and choke you out. Can you get out from underneath that person? And of course, you're going to face people that you can't.
Yeah.
Because they're skilled or they're bigger or whatever, but you're going to practice using that under the realism of that pressure and that non-compliance so that when you get into that situation, otherwise you're going to refine those abilities and get better and better and better at doing those things. So Mr. Hayes was sort of, he would quote Hattori Hanzo, if he came to America today and he saw a phone that you could access a map of an area, and he saw a sniper rifle where I could shoot from a mile away, and he saw pants with 6 pockets in them that I could carry all my gear, he would probably be pretty quick to adopt
Yeah.
those things into his arsenal.
Yeah.
I just see jujitsu as a technology. So why wouldn't I adopt that technology that obviously works in the context of putting two guys in a cage and seeing who's going to win in that fight? Jiu-jitsu made a pretty strong case for being real effective. Obviously, it's not the everything, right? You go to war and people are shooting and there's guys trying to stab and kill you all over the place. You want to have some more skills than just being able to take somebody down and armbar them. But that technology clearly stood out as one, like, it works. So let's take it, let's pull it in, and let's learn from it what we can learn from it to make ourselves better. So I don't want to, again, stand and say, like, you got to do it this way, you got to do it this way. It's just part of what I'm looking at, what I'm excited about. So that's why we do it here.
How do you get because this must happen, the arrogant guy who doesn't want to be tapped out? Because you know this, when you're tapped out, it is an insult to your ego. And at what threshold does that arrogant guy be like, now I respect it because I was afraid to have resistance because of something that happened in my childhood. It's not macho to be tapped out by anybody. But after the 100th tap out, and here's a deeper question, maybe another question is, do those guys go away quickly if they're ashamed of being tapped out? Because that's what one of the main things I admire about jiu-jitsu is, look, you're tapped out hundreds of times. Your ego is crushed over and over and over again. At what point you're tapped out so much that you just see it as, ooh, it's a learning opportunity. It's not a crush to my ego. I'm now opening my mind up to learning new things. The ego's gone. It's knocked out of you, or we'll say tapped out of you. Now I'm at the point where I can finally, I've been knocked down, like the military. Now I can grow. Now I can listen to the guy over there who he's half my weight, but he moves around me like the wind, and my weight and strength are now almost useless compared to him. Is there a threshold that you see students when they hit that mark and now they're in it for the game? They're not going to quit because they see the magic in jiu-jitsu where the older karate guy dismisses it instantly without even getting on the ground.
The thing that I think everybody deserves with jiu-jitsu is you need to come in and you need to believe it. And that is the thing jiu-jitsu does well. So I can get a new guy that comes in and I say, okay, buddy, lay down on the ground and I'm just going to sit on. I'm not going to do anything but get back up and go as hard as you want. Even if I say, please don't poke me in the eye, but if you do poke me in the eye, I'm going to poke you back in the eye, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do that, I can do that back. But if we don't want to do that, you can use whatever you want. And everybody deserves to experience that because jiu-jitsu has developed a positional domination skill set that if you know jiu-jitsu and the other person doesn't, and you're on the ground, it's not fair. Once you believe that, once I've made you a believer that you want to learn jiu-jitsu, let's get rid of that like fighting competitive mindset when we're training, when we're practicing. Because the saying that we have, you can't win practice. If we're going to show you this technique and we're going to work on it, when it comes time to practice it with your buddies, even if you're not good at it, even if you're going to mess it up, you got to practice it. You got to practice. You got to try to make it work until it becomes a skill set. If you want to go test it out, if you want wins in your column, here are all these competition things you can go to. We can go over here. We can compete with this. If you want to fight, here's how we can go. This is how you can fight. And we're going to make sure you're safe while you're doing it. But if you just want to train, which we have a lot of people that don't necessarily compete, we have some really great competitors I'm very proud of, but we've got some great folks that I'm equally proud of that just come in here and put in the time on the mat, and they will tap out with a smile. And it's an overstated thing that you either win or you learn.
Yeah.
If you win, you get validation. What I did was right. If I lose something, I have an opportunity to get a question answered. And that's where I learn. And so as soon as you can flip that mindset, the sooner you'll start making gains. The sooner, again, you get really curious. And this is another quote by Mr. Hayes that I loved. The perfect answer to the unasked question is just meddlesome advice. If
Yeah, yeah.
somebody catches you in something, you don't know how to get it, you've got a question. And then I can come over and say, hey, if you do this, this, and this next time, you'll have a different result. And that advice will make something. But if I have somebody that comes in and I try to teach every detail of the technique to begin from the beginning to the end, I'm going to be talking, and so much of it's going to go over their head. We have had people that come in and they just can't let, I don't want to get tapped out mindset. You can't convince them. They're like, if I get used to this jujitsu stuff, if I get used to what you guys are doing, you guys are winning because you're cheating, because you're hanging on to my jacket, or you get that guy, and eventually they will weed themselves out. The great thing about a beautiful like community like you and I both have at our dojos is only good people stick around.
Yeah.
The jerks sort of weed themselves out, and I'm lucky. I'm happy about that. Now, and you got to deal with them for a class or two, but typically, again, jiu-jitsu lets you get to a position where if you're underneath somebody, people tend to have one of two reactions. That was a scary, awful place. I'm going to pretend that never happened, and I'm going to talk trash about it, and I'm never going to let myself get there again. Or, oh my God, that was awful. I better learn how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
That's immediately when you can tell what kind of person you're dealing with. Are they a coward, or do they have grit, or what was their upbringing? I have a technical question for you about jujitsu. How do you rest when I know when I'm doing any type of martial arts, I know where to stop to not damage them and wreck their shoulder, because you can feel it tense up, all that motor skill stuff and the feel of the technique. How do you rest when someone says go? Because it's so hard on your body to keep your breath and everything, and just to keep your muscles from being exhausted. And how do you know when they say go, how not to destroy your opponent's shoulder, but to tap them out without going full speed? I know there's a Nagare flow to it all, but I'm interested in your opinion on that, because I've seen people in jiu-jitsu and they look like they're laying, and they're not. They're resting, they're thinking, and they may even be mutually giving each other a break because they're not out to be under a timer. That's the two questions I have as a technical thing. How do you rest, and how do you keep from injuring your opponent and going too quick?
But both of those things will come with practice and with experience. Yeah. It is such a physical drain to get into fight and to struggle against another person. And most people right off the bat, white knuckle it. They grab and they're squeezing, and they're breathing heavy, and they're putting all their energy into it. So we learn what's called selective tensioning. Sometimes my grip needs to be tight, but the rest of my body doesn't. Right? Sometimes I need to squeeze with my knees, but my arms need to be mobile. And when you get inoculated to the stress of it all, when it stops becoming a major adrenaline producing event, that's way easier to do. So one, you just face it over and over again. I get used to this big dude sitting on me, and it's not that big of a deal. I've been here 100 times. So yeah. One, that has a huge effect. So you stop going into that fight or flight place, and you can start thinking clearly and making good decisions. When you're in a position where you can think clearly and make good decisions, you're not going to be as hurried, because your perception's going to be better. Your eyes are going to be more open metaphorically, and you're going to feel things coming in, so you can shut things down earlier. So you're less likely to get caught behind the curve where, like, oh no, I'm here and my arm's locked out, and maybe I don't have a good opportunity to escape and I just need to tap. But the more I get put in that position, the sooner I can start like working my hand out and maybe avoiding it. So it comes into, again, sort of the stress inoculation and improved conditioning. The conditioning piece of jujitsu is another of its superpowers. My gas tank is this big, and if I don't win this fight within this time, all of my skills are out the window because I'm too tired. I'm huffing and puffing, breathing and hyperventilating and circling the drain. But with jujitsu, again, you build that with the training method that jujitsu utilizes. You build that gas tank. You could do it with taijutsu. You could do it. An Americana is an onikudaki. A mirror lock is a mushadori. A butterfly sweep is a ganseki naga. It's just call it a different name. But you could still practice taijutsu techniques with a jujitsu training methodology and build that gas tank. You learn the limits of a person's joints and limbs through trust with training partners. So I know this buddy's got a tight shoulder. I know this guy tweaked his knee last week, and I'm going to be respectful of that. But I have to be mentally perceptive enough to keep that in mind, because again, like it can get too adrenalized. If you can maintain that sort of calm state of mind, you can feel it start to tension. Yeah. And so if I go with somebody, so I've had a new guy a couple months ago, just didn't want to tap out, just didn't want to get tapped out, and so I would pull this arm lock to this point, and then I just stay there. I just held it on the end, and I would talk to him, say, "Hey, buddy, if you don't tap, what I could do right now is I could drive my hip up really hard. If you think you can get out, try to get out, but don't hurt yourself trying to get out." And I would talk to him, and he would eventually be like, "Okay, I tap out," and would sort of agree to it. But if you can get into those positions of extension or almost sort of like terminal rotation, where I know, like, if I take a big breath in, it's going to pop, it's going to snap. That's developed over training as well. With one of the first things submissions that I advocate people get good at are the strangles, because if you can get into that, you're less likely to crank something or rip something off. And big and strong can fight against that arm bar, but if you start squeezing the neck, they're going to have to tap out or take a nap. Either way, they'll calm down a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So,
what do you say to I don't know I assume at some point you train with firearms as well as part of your repertoire?
Hardee personally does. I used to teach concealed carry classes. I used to do a lot of firearms training. And at this point, it just got a little cumbersome to facilitate group classes. So what I have now is a network of individuals that I direct people to. I had a private range that we would set up, and we'd get tables and get everything going. There's a little bit of inherent risk to that because you get people that are unfamiliar handling dangerous objects. So at this point, they're real professionals who do more of that sort of thing, and they're better suited and better set up. So that's sort of the route that I use. Personally, I still enjoy doing that and going out and practicing as much as I can. But over the years, I have refined what I want to do professionally to mostly being in here. Now, we would do, another passion of mine was wilderness skills. So I would go out and we would teach survival classes, and we would take people out on different sort of events and excursions, and it was great. But again, it was a lot of logistics, a lot of setup, had to have extra insurance, had to do a lot of things, and it didn't always produce enough to justify continuing to do it. We used to run a group, we called it Quest Tactical, and through that group we would teach survival skills and firearm skills and do other things, but we sort of let that go, and Hardee professionally focuses on what happens here in the dojo or any seminars that I teach. And but again, I've got a great network of people that if that's what they're into, I know who to send them to, and I go. So like I have a survival skills instructor that I see in Virginia, and when I go, I let my students, hey, I'm going up for this class to train with this individual. His name's Tim McWelch, Advanced Survival Training, and I'll go up to train with Mr. McWelch, and usually we'll bring 5 or 6 people. Hey, I'm going to go do this shotgun class. We're going to go train with Alaska Tactical down here in Durham, and we'll get 3 or 4 people that'll come with us and do that. And that seems to be a better way to facilitate that because everybody's got their bandwidth. I'm already asking people, come in here, work out with me, do taijutsu with me. Let's learn how to do spear stuff. Come in and let's wrestle 3 or 4 times a week. So I'm already a big ask on people. So I try to tone that down a little bit.
And there's no time. Yeah, like you said, the bandwidth is limited. The beauty of us being in it so long is we can focus, step on islands of different parts of the martial arts because it's so vast you can't possibly even conceive of all of it. But over the years, you get to taste them and test them. And then you can't stick with all of them. You let someone else be the expert in that area, but you at least have the beauty of the experience of it. There was a time where I was so into guns, and now I'm not. So into the Buddhism and meditation. Now I'm not. So into the tournament stuff, younger. Now I'm not. I'm older. How do I adapt the martial arts as I get older? And how do I keep it rough and tumble tough for the young ones who need to go through that stage of getting bruised? But because I'm older, I can't do the dive rolls I used to do, or it's an excuse perhaps, because I've had the back surgeries and things. So you don't want to become an instructor because when I see Hatsumi Sensei at age 90 or even 70 or 80 teaching stuff about throwing people with fingers and stuff, and I'm like, not real. But if you look at Hatsumi in the 80s, he was a kick-ass martial artist. You have to be able to stay around long enough to know what's real, what isn't, the levels you're seeing. Everyone starts as a Padawan and eventually they might become a Yoda, but you can't start as the Yoda. Is some of the finger grabbing stuff legitimate? Perhaps. Skeptical, but maybe at 80 I'll be able to do that, which is exciting. So it's hard for us as a teacher to realize all these different stages of martial arts as you age, and how do you age gracefully with it and know where to let things go that you just either don't care about anymore or you're just not ever going to be an expert at. I just don't have the time to do all this. Like you said, we're asking people to follow us 5-6 days a week. Most people are like, I don't want to do it 1 day a week. It's really, really hard to balance all of that. I just find the older I get, the more unsure of my answers become. Everything becomes more gray. I seem to be getting dumber with age because I'm starting to see things that I question myself every day. Yet, like you were talking about the magic, like black belt on Monday, we did a technique. And what I like to do with the people that are showdown and above is I say, okay, it's time to outsource it. You come up with a finish. He's going to try to sweep your leg here. He's going to try to take you down. How do you counter that? And what I do is I sit back, and if there are 10 students in class, I got 10 brand new ideas and techniques that I didn't see. You can't beat outsourcing to your students. If you say, show me how to get out of that, you have 20 people working on that, and they come up with 5, you're like, I never even thought of that. Can I steal that? I want to write notes. Can we videotape that? Because I want to take that for myself. So I find myself constantly learning from my students, like every day. Stuff I've seen 1,000 times, I'm like, I didn't see it from your angle. And that's what I believe keeps you and I going is, again, we're students. Yeah, we're teachers. Who cares? We're students. We're just in a position that we can help other people because we didn't quit. What we used to joke around, I wasn't dumb enough to quit. I'm still here. Why? Because I'm passionate and I love to learn. I get up at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, excited to go to the dojo and talk to my friend Hardee. After this, I have work to do. I have administrative stuff to do. I have to answer 5 parents' inquiries. Tonight at 4 o'clock, I get to be here and be around the kids, and I get to be with people who are 70 and 80 years old that are coming here to grasp a hold of their life at their age. How cool, how freaking cool is our life, Hardee? How cool is our life? We are so blessed and fortunate to be where we are. Do you agree with me? I wake up pinching myself every day. I get to know someone like you and find out about jujitsu, which I'm very weak at, because I've always used my size on the ground. But my gas tank is small compared to Hardee's. how do I get my gas tank bigger? So I get to leave this interview with you or this friendship conversation, and I get to go and learn new things because of just the words you've spoken to me today. You have enlightened our audience about jujitsu. All martial arts are the same. They're all just different ways of trajecting up the mountain on the path. But the things that you said today, I can't wait to use in class and to nuance my own training and to talk to students about and excite them about jujitsu and get rid of all the negative stereotypes about other martial arts. I'm so happy that I talked to you today because of all the mind-blowing stuff you're giving me. Thank you
Well,
for that.
absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I love watching the stuff that you put out on your channel. I have cherished our friendship over the years, and I would love to get in and get a chance to train with you or come up to. I've never been to your dojo up in Ohio, and would love to
Yeah.
come check that out.
Yeah, I would love to have you because we could do so many cool ground stuff, that my students are, yellow belts in. There's so much to learn and so much to know, and I'm happy that I'm in a place in my life where I can either afford or ask for favors for people to come to our school. I believe the worst thing you can do is close your door and not allow new people in, fresh ideas. You might as well just shut your school because you're dead at that point. COVID taught us that, didn't it? I would love to do another talk with you eventually about the business side of things. How do you have student retention issues? What do you do when little Bobby wants to quit? How do you do these things in your dojo that I think that some audience out there, even though there's very few of us that run a school, would benefit from, where it's not just about training, it's about the business side of things that people don't see. And there's a whole other level to what you and I do that people don't see. We share the stress with, we can laugh about it. We've had the exact same experiences over and over again. I can't wait to talk to you about that. You are so, I know you're humble and all this, but you're so damn good at what you do. And you don't have to flaunt it. You are it. You are the warrior that many of us look up to be. And of course you stand on the shoulders of giants as I do, but our time is very limited on this earth, and our students are going to come up and they're not going to know who we are anymore. We'll become indifferent or irrelevant at some point. But I'm happy that I'm kind of riding this wave with you, even though I'm older. I love having you as kind of part of my martial art life.
The feeling is mutual, man. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to come up and chat with you this way. And we can definitely reconnect and have many more conversations.
Well, kick ass, my friend. And I don't know Roy, but maybe he'll watch this and he has my ultimate respect. And thank you for tying in jujitsu with the older arts that we do to make it relevant and leading the way. I really appreciate your time, Hardee.
My pleasure, Todd. Thank you.
Okay.